Thank you very much, Kathy. Well, tonight we're looking at the new board of IRBA. The National Treasury has appointed a new board of directors for the Independent Regulatory Board of Directors. This is the watchdog body in South Africa that keeps the checks and balances of ethical behavior in the sector that is currently in a crisis. Joining us to talk about the new board is former JSE President Major General Roy Andersen, who was caretaker of IRBA after the previous board was dissolved by the Finance Minister in January this year. Thank you very much for joining us, Major General Andersen. The appointment of the new IRBA board comes amid great expectations from the new board to chart a new path, a clean path in the auditing sector in South Africa after the auditing firms were identified, as you know, as having played an enabling role in major corruption cases in South Africa. What is the mandate that this new board has ahead of them?
Well, good evening and thank you. First of all, let me say that I'm very pleased with the board we've come up with. We put a lot of effort into the advertising, the screening, the vetting, the interviewing, submitted the list to Minister Mboweni. He submitted it to the Cabinet, who made no changes, and I'm confident we've got a strong board. But the challenges for them are great. The whole auditing profession has been brought into disrepute. Now, let me quickly add that the vast majority of chartered accountants and auditors do a superb, honest, ethical job. But we can't deny that there have been some lapses, some notable lapses, and we really need to address it. So one of the things we did as the caretaker board was to sit down with management, and let me quickly add again, there's a very competent management team at IRBA, but to say, let's really understand what caused these collapses and to make sure that the strategic plan, which we submitted to Parliament for approval, addresses them. And you really got to understand why there were these lapses. What's happened to the ethical culture? We also discovered quite quickly that it's the auditors who pick up the rap at the end of the day, and quite rightly so. But bear in mind, they just one cog in the wheel. What about the finance director? What about the head of internal audit? What about the full board of directors? So we've said to the new incoming board, as the caretakers, look at the plan, make sure it addresses the issues. But we think the problem in South Africa is slightly bigger than the auditing profession.
Major General, are there new powers that are there in the South African, lexicon that are going to give, auditors more accountability? There has been talk of new seizure powers that actually make sure that they keep auditing firms on the straight and narrow. What has been done to make sure that the things that we saw at Steinhoff International, Tongaat Hewlett, VBS Mutual Bank, don't happen again?
Well, let me say that by the time you get to seizure, in other words, IRBA can move in and seize the records of the auditors, that's already too late, because then the event has happened. If the car smash has happened, if I may use those words. The real issue is to prevent it from happening. Now, how do you prevent it from happening? It's all about ethics. One thing we also did was in our short term of 3 months, we brought in 3 new international audit quality control standards to make sure that the quality of the auditing is as good as it should be. But I reiterate, the auditors are right at the end of the chain. The issue is bigger. What about the ethics in the boards? What about the ethics with the finance director? And what about the ethics that the shareholders should expect in terms of the King Code?
Talk to us, Major General, about the configuration of this new board. The previous board was dissolved because many people were unhappy about one person who was appointed to the board. Are you confident that the market and the industry in particular will back this board as it has been backed clearly by Cabinet and the National Treasury?
Well, we hope so. National Treasury has endorsed it. The Accountant General was part of the selection team. There were 3 of us. We vetted the board carefully, not only to check their qualifications, their ethics, no criminal records, etc., etc., but we really asked them about their ability to cooperate with other people and to get the job done. IRBA has a good management team. All they want is a board that can go along with them, clearly challenge them, but by the same token, give them the support they deserve. I think this board's got a nice mix. You can see there are 2 lawyers, 2 former registered auditors, and the rest are all chartered accountants. And interestingly enough, the way it worked out, there are 6 ladies and 4 men. And we also have a nice racial mix. And the last thing we looked at was the age distribution. You know, younger people think differently from my generation. So the youngest member is 36, the oldest member is 63, and the average age is 46. So I think we've got the right blend of age, race, gender, and most importantly, they stand for strong ethical standards.
Major General, as a former chief of the JSE, you must know how South Africa has fallen off the global scales when it comes to auditing. The few companies that I've mentioned, including Steinhoff and Tongaat Hewlett, are just but a few. Is there concern right now that even listed companies are still falling, for the problems that we've seen in the auditing firms? Because clearly this is an auditing crisis that we have in South Africa right now.
That we've had problems is undoubted. One cannot deny that. But we engaged with the firms, particularly the 4 big ones, but not only them. And I can assure you they are taking the need for the highest international quality control standards very, very seriously. It hurts me as a former auditor myself to see our profession move from number 1 in the world, I think, to number 50-something. That's embarrassing and it's unnecessary. But I think everybody's taking it seriously. And with the full support of Minister Mboweni, who's fully behind the reforms, I think we're doing well. And I can also quickly add that last year you would have seen the restructuring of the governance of the South African Institute of Chartered Accountants. That, together with the new Audit Professions Act, I think augurs well for the future. So I think it can only get better, and I think we do have a sound foundation. One other issue that was of concern to my fellow caretaker and I was the number of outstanding disciplinary matters against members of the profession. We did our best to catch up. I think we processed something like 46 disciplinary matters, but the new board will also have to deal with more and expedite those matters as soon as possible.
Major General, before I let you go, you spent months, taking care of IRBA. What would you say still needs to be done in the profession to keep it on the straight and narrow? Are there any, legal matters that have to, be strengthened to make sure that we quickly move to, arresting and, holding those who are responsible accountable? What would you say still needs to be done to get us back to those high scales that we saw South Africa back in the day?
Well, let me first of all say that I think IRBA needs more investigatory resources. In our short time there, we increased the budget, we created more posts, but there is a backlog. But once again, that's at the end of the chain. The real issue is not more legislation. We have great legislation. We've got a great new act. All the laws in our financial services sector are very good. They are world standards. The King Code of Governance is world class, and many people have copied us. So what does it boil down to? It boils down to the behavior of individuals. South Africa has been let down by a few individuals, and that's just not acceptable, and I certainly hope they will all be prosecuted and pay the penalty.
Major General, I thank you very much for your time there. That was Major General Roy Andersen, who was taking care of the Independent Regulatory Board of Auditors for the past couple of months, now announcing a new board at the helm of this watchdog body. But before I let you go, let me take you through what has happened in the markets with a look at the JSE.